Good afternoon and welcome to Will You Review My CV? This is episode number 27, and I'm your host, Alan Wozni. Today's episode features a job seeker with a 24-year career in human resources. There are two reasons why I responded to her job search appeal. First, her extensive experience in this field, in my view, could be a potential benefit to many startups in her local community. She's from Vancouver, near Vancouver. It's called Surrey, BC. And the population there is massive, but the startup community in British Columbia, BC Tech Association, is tremendous. I mean, there's so many companies. I mean, Clio comes to mind. Clio is a legal tech software, legal tech company, and they're well into the $1 billion plus valuation, which people they refer to as a unicorn, but they're just one of many across Canada, but certainly in British Columbia. So I believe strongly that her 24-year career. Imagine startup scaling, growing from just a startup in 2 to 3 years to a $1 billion valuation or whatever. They have issues of people. I believe her experience, if targeted and put in front of the right people, it could be valuable, hugely valuable to the startup community. Now, the second reason I've seen, and there has been, and people, I'm not an expert in HR tech, but I've seen significant innovation over the last few years in the HR sector, and so that includes several. I mean, I recently looked. And I'm not gonna share my screen because it's just information. Like I just looked recently, the last couple of weeks or last few weeks, in the Strictly VC newsletter, May 10th, last week, Wise Hire, spelled WZE, WIZE Hire, an 8-year startup based in Houston, Texas, has built a hiring platform for small businesses. They announced a $30 million Series B round. So it's Tiger Global, Amplo, Mercury. They've raised $37 million altogether. So clearly, in my view, if they're raising, that means they have people using their product. They're engaged with the community. They've got people. There's a use case that you don't raise in today's era, in today's market. You just don't raise. You don't get the attention of people like Tiger Global if you don't have engagement. If you don't have community engagement. Next one, Marr, a 2-year-old Berkeley, California-based startup that helps its clients flush out tech talent. Now, there's a lot of tech recruiting resources, but this one, the founders are from the Middle East, so their focus is the Middle East, North Africa, and the Middle East. So MENA region, Middle East, North Africa. They raised $3 million seed, and the money that primarily came from a company called Stripe. Stripe is a payments portal, I believe, and so they've got the attention. They're getting people using their product. May 5th, so that was two on May 10th. Two, TechCrunch on May 5th article, Strictly VC. There's a company called Barraiser. They're based out of Delhi in India. Big market, huge market. They raised $4.2 million for a platform that allows for online interviews and recruiting. Now, I do know India's the language diversity there. There's a lot of different languages. I know English. I asked an Indian national once, what's the most common language? And they said it's English, because there's so many languages, so many dialects. But anyway, they raised $4.2 million. A couple of different angel seed capital is pretty new. It's a pretty early stage company. Again, getting the attention of investors. And then just one more here in Canada. This one baffled me. I'm just like, incredible. Another, I mentioned a unicorn in Vancouver called Clio. Well, if you go down east to Montreal, there's a company called talent.com. Aptly named. If you're talking in human resources sector. On 16th of March, they announced a $120 million, not Canadian, US, $120 million US Canadian Series B. So a little more. Series B is you're already hiring, you're scaling, you've got revenue, recurring revenue. So some big heavy hitters. So there, it's called the Next Generation Job Search Platform. They have, talent. If I look at, I remember looking at their announcement in more detail. They've been in multiple languages, and there are multiple countries right now already operating. So Innovia Capital, CDPQ, which is Caisse Deposit Placement de Quebec. Excuse my French on that one. It's Caisse or CDPQ, and they're pretty massive. BDC Capital, and Harbor Vest Partners. So they were 120 million. Series B. It's not long ago. They were a startup. So imagine the HR. They themselves have massive HR issues. They've got to hire people. They've got to recruit people. They've got to train people. They've got to mentor people, performance reviews. You've got the whole gamut. I can just imagine the HR person's desk full of paper and contracts. Talent.com helps with that. But that's a job search platform. That's not even the back office support. That's not the recruiting, the performance reviews. I'm going to go into some of that in detail. But there's so the HR, like many different like cybersecurity or other. There's not one platform that can handle it all. At least maybe there is. But this is incredible. I mean, 120 million just for the job search. So let's move on. I want to share my screen now. And I want to go through the career advice I provided to a job seeker. Her name is Caroline Laycock. She's from Surrey, British Columbia. I mentioned that earlier. It's just outside of Vancouver. So you've got 1 million plus population. 24-year career. I just can't get over. I can't get over 24-year career. But anyway, let's go to the PowerPoint. Let's go to the PowerPoint. Let's see what I said back in July 2019. For some reason, here we are. Okay. So I'll share that. Oops. Where's my PowerPoint? Come on. Hopefully this is sharing. So slideshow. Okay. So here's my slideshow. It's career advice number 230. Today's date is 17th of May, 2022. And I just turned 56. So Caroline Laycock, Human Resources in Canada. That was on LinkedIn in July 2019. So nearly 3 years ago. Here's what Caroline posted. This is what she posted on LinkedIn to the LinkedIn influencer. It's not a portal. Oleg Vishnopolsky, like Bridget Hyacinth, they have a massive following, million and a half followers. And they're there for the job seekers to help them. And they do a terrific job. And I've said this before. So Oleg she's probably responded to a call. She made a comment in one of his posts. Having applied for many jobs and no response, I do and am disappointed. I try to show my skills, but nothing. Any strategies on how to get noticed? So I focused on this. I went right to the two listeners out there, the two viewers of this channel will know who's the first one I'm going to go to. Gary Vaynerchuk. How do you get noticed, or how do you create awareness? Here's the overview of the advice I provided, or some of the recommendations I provided. So Gary Vaynerchuk, no surprise there. And I mentioned earlier Vancouver, the tech community in Vancouver, and her HR skills how that could apply. So I put some list of Vancouver innovation back in 2019, and I updated it for this purposes of this episode. I updated it to 2022, just some current innovation in the Vancouver area. AngelList. I'm going to go over some metrics from AngelList. AngelList has grown significantly over the last 3 years as well. A lot of startups are post jobs on there, and AngelList also allows investors to syndicate and to band together. I know a fellow here in Calgary. His name is Matthew Wilson, and he uses that. He said he's part of a network of 800 different investors. 800 investors who can invest in one company, and they selectively, so they band together. Power. That's a lot of power. And then just HR tech innovation. There's a lot of innovation in that's in that discipline, and I'm going to highlight it. Several from back in 2018, and then a few I found this past few weeks, or this past few months, this year in 2022. And the last thing, I put a star here, and I didn't go into details, but during 2021, I did 21 episodes involving 56 different students. And some of those episodes were HR driven. So the students were job seeking ish. What should I do? And look, so I had on experts. They had probably 4 or 5, Patty Miller, Lita Tate. So, I had different experts on to talk about to the students about job search and what they should do. So I didn't go into details here, but I just think I encourage anyone to go look at the student series I did. I did 21 episodes in 2021, and some of the dialogue was incredible, and the suggestions or advice or guidance that were provided by the HR experts was just Ali Knoll. So that was the other one, Resume Free. She's up in Edmonton, and so yeah, there's a lot of that can be taken away from those, and I'm not going to spend any time here, but I just wanted to highlight that. Okay, so if you remember, Caroline was looking to how to get noticed. Now, if anybody's listened to Gary Vee or some of his earlier material, and even today, if you get past some of the stuff he does on crypto, how do you get noticed? One of the very first podcasts I listened to, one of the very first podcasts or keynote speeches that Gary Vaynerchuk gave, he said, if you're 49-year-old Mary the accountant or 72-year-old Stanley the electrician, it's not too late. The internet is there. The internet, social media is there for you to support you. So I was like, hey, I was 50-year-old Alan the accountant. He got my attention. He got my attention with those comments. So, post articles on Facebook or LinkedIn. That was the first thing what to do. She could post articles in Surrey. What to do in Surrey? She could talk about the animal species on Grouse Mountain, which is just outside of Vancouver, or maybe give her views on the real estate in Delta, which is there's a real estate shows in Vancouver, and everybody knows as well. The prices in Vancouver are very high, and real estate is very, is very it's scarce. It's hard to find good real estate there, or find good, because they just can't build. The new builds in Vancouver, at least as I know, it's just not that easy to build in that area in the city. So, I don't know. I don't know with nature hikes, trails, what to do on, the English Bay, and what sightseeing, bird watching, inside. I don't know, like what's of interest to her. She could post articles of anything. That'll get them noticed. She'll get noticed for her, that side of her, but her HR side is where, she could post things on HR. I don't know. That was just my suggestions. Then the Crushing It book, I recommended that she take a look at to read the Crushing It book. I listened to it on audio, the Amazon, it's called Audible. And it just features ordinary people who did extraordinary things. People who got noticed, like Mimi Goodwin. She, the story, Mimi, she has it's called So Deaf, I think, but she does a magazine, and she does a women's, like she was just basically, she liked to sew. It's called So Deaf, I think. She liked to sew, and Mimi was sewing. She would just take a magazine article and make the dress from the article, and then she was posting that this is my dress, and she was basically riffing or taking from the runway and creating those, and people was like, hey, can you make one for me? And so that led to, I remember listening to the Gary Vaynerchuk, and she says, yeah, so I was just posting on LinkedIn or Instagram. I was posting on Instagram that I'm going to go shopping or wherever it was for patterns and material. And people said, can I go with you? She started like a trend. People were flying across the United States or flying across the US just to go and shop patterns with her. So anyway, and then the other one is Alex Hansa. I should have written this here, Fooley's Clothing Company. There was an article. He made a couple of things that stand out with the Alex one. So Alex was taking a can of Coke or a can and stuffing a shirt. So his clothing company, and he had these unique shirts, and I don't know, with logos and things like that. And so that was one thing. He'd stuff them into a can and then ship them to people with a little handwritten note. And the other part of that was, I guess it's an old school tactic on Instagram or wherever, you just wear the same shirt, but 20 different people or 100 different people wear the same shirt to make it look like you have multiple, because he didn't have money. So he just multiple posted and had that tag people on Instagram And so I love that tactic. It still probably would still work today. Maybe it's old school. But from that, he got an order one night. He got an order, you got to make an order for the next day. There was like, he had to work over the night to fulfill the order because there was some special function with women. There was, I think, Black women in community in I don't know if it's Atlanta or somewhere. He showed up in the morning, worked through the night, had the shirts, and the coordinator said, "Oh, we'd like you to meet. We need to get a photo with the keynote speaker." The keynote speaker. Well, I don't know how that worked, but the key organizer was Oprah Winfrey. And so if you go to Alex Hance's Twitter profile or his Instagram, one of his profiles, he has that photo where he took a picture with Oprah Winfrey and the 4 or 5 other organizers. So yeah, that I still get goosebumps when I think of that story. So again, so how do you get noticed? There's no one secret. It's a multiple of things that you may do. Eventually, Alex got noticed by Oprah Winfrey. Mimi Goodwin got noticed by her followers, and that took off. So other considerations. There's the high school party concept. This is Gary Vaynerchuk again. He talks about it in I think it was in February 2019 or something like that. There was Gary did a Inside 4Ds in Florida, and he said, what did you do during high school? Whoever hosted the party became the real social person, the Ryan Reynolds from that movie, like that. Literally, you move from a D to an A on a social scale because you've hosting the party. So put that into a business context and host a party. Bring in HR experts from around Vancouver and get them to talk about HR issues that they're dealing with. Now, this was pre-COVID, so it's just the business landscape, whatever's in Toronto, Vancouver. But that's the high school party concept, and there's many ways to apply that in business. And then the other one was use of TikTok. 45-year-old dentist. She was featured on the Crushing the Book. Chitra Gurtha. I can't remember her name, but she did a video showing kids how to floss on TikTok. It was Musically back then, and she became the cool dentist. Now, recently, I had to Google this. 27-year-old Miss Excel spreadsheets. She goes by the handle of Cat Norton. She got well over a million followers on TikTok, and she just teaches people how to use Excel. I learned Excel 40 years ago, literally in 1984, 85. We were using it in Excel and Lotus 123. It's been around forever, and so Miss Excel or Cat Norton is using Musically to teach people, or not Musically, is using TikTok to show people her age and others like her, men, women, children, whoever, how to use TikTok, and she's gotten noticed. Then the other one is Chip Conley. See, Chip Conley was again featured on Gary Vaynerchuk's podcast a couple of years ago. Before I did this, it was probably after I did this post, or this recommendations, but it's just the midlife wisdom. You're 55 and you're suddenly out of work. He goes into that. Caroline Laycock, you had 24 years as an amazing career in the city of Surrey, and suddenly you just find yourself displaced. Chip Conley goes through that, the midlife wisdom school. So let's look back. Back in 2019, the innovation in Vancouver. And I just put 5 or 6 here. There was probably a lot more at that time. I mean, again, you only get what you can get. The information's out there. You can Google and find these things. But CMD is a cybersecurity company. And I mentioned that, so HR tech innovation, I don't think there's one company that does everything. The back office support, the hiring, the recruiting, the performance management. It's like in cybersecurity. I've listened to so many podcasts that say there's so many services available, and there's so many, how to focus on cybersecurity. So there's not one company that can handle all of your cybersecurity needs, but CMD is out of Vancouver, and I haven't looked further. I haven't looked at where they're at in terms of valuation, but I got to imagine it's such a hot area. And then Damon Motorcycles. If you go to their website, it says, we use artificial intelligence to make your motorcycle safer and smarter. And I imagine data, right? How often you stop, what situations you stop, braking, the speed limits. It'd be pretty cool. I mean, using tech to an old school motorcycle. Inventus They look at carbon capture. I think that's in the soil. I don't know if that's the one that's in soil, but anyway, Inventus carbon capture issues there, which is a very important topic today. This was 2019, but green tech, clean tech, they would fit very nice. I'm sure their valuation's gone up. Procurity, maybe that's Procurify, but it's procure. Anyway, they're procure to pay system again, helping in supply chain management, supply management, buying goods for your company. Traction Guest, again, as these companies scale, they need HR. They need HR to hire, fire, recruit. Like that whole performance reviews, contracting. There's a lot of issues in HR when the companies are scaling. And by the way, I find these, and I've written up above here, I find these in the newsletters of Strictly VC, FinSME, and there's now a new one, BetaKit. BetaKit came up over the last couple of years. That's a Canadian publication. I always say this. There's usually two announcements. When they raise, they make two announcements. One, we're going to hire marketing people and tech people to scale our website. So marketing to promote our website or product or service, and developers to build our product or service. So, those are people. Those are people that need HR to move them through the system and scale up. HR in startups. Okay, so let's look at fast forward 3 years or 2.5 years. And now I put BetaKit here, Strictly VC and FinSMEs. So I just typed in my search email, Vancouver. Terramera came up 1 million. Oh, this is the one that measures carbon levels in the soil. They raised $1 million this past few months. Layer Zero Labs, $135 million in funding. And it's a blockchain tech startup. You go to their website, and they're just bringing structure to all the different blockchains. Think crypto. Think of all the different companies that are using blockchain, and this brings them all together. At least that it gives structure to, or puts infrastructure to a lot of the blockchain companies out there, like blockchain initiatives out there. The 135 million. They're well over $1 billion valuation. They're based in Vancouver, and Tom Brady was one. Tom Brady, if anybody doesn't know NFL football, the New England Patriots, he's won 6. He's invested in this company. He's one of the investors, one of the marquee investors. And out of Vancouver, a company called Evoke Innovations. It's probably Evoke. They raised $150 million for a new fund. They focus on investing in startups in the clean tech space. They've got 15 plus startups in their portfolio. So again, if I was Caroline, it's not easy, but there's the potential 15 different companies who may need HR or may need some help with their HR departments. Maybe not full-time work, but you never know if you call. Sanctuary Cognitive Systems. They raised $58 million in funding. They are working on robots to give them human-like intelligence. Pretty cool if you're into robots. And then a company called Responsive, they raised $3.5 million for fintech productivity tools. Again, fintech is a pretty hot space as well. I didn't say again, but fintech is a pretty hot space, and a lot of companies are raising in that space. All right. I mentioned AngelList. I think I spent a lot of time on it. I'll tell you what's the difference with Angel. So here at AngelList, back in 2019, I was able to search, and I could pretty much target each city, each country, and come up with the numbers of just for general. And so back then it was just I could get that search algorithm, but now it knows me. The IP Internet Protocol knows where I am, and it always, every time I search, it comes up with CFO or accounting or Calgary-based companies, and it's like I can't Jimmy. It's something with the cookies or whatever it is, but I probably could get someone to figure that out so I can get a better search. I tried to update Toronto. I put Toronto, and it gives me like 2 jobs or whatever because it knows where I am, and so something needs to change. But anyway, back in 2019, they weren't so sophisticated, and you could go across Canada and see that there's 1,270 jobs posted available. In Toronto, 656, Montreal, 235, Vancouver 208. And then you could go further and you can still do it. I think it's just based on where you are. And if you put remote, you probably get some good if you put remote. But HR people can work remote easily, in my view, could easily work remote. So I imagine today the very similar metrics, if not more. COVID there was a big dip during COVID, but companies are hiring again, and tech innovation in Vancouver is really, really high. So anyway, that was AngelList back then. I tried to get the same metrics, but I was going to put side by side and show 2019, 2022, but it's just the numbers came up weird, so I stopped. All right, and then HR tech innovation. Back in 2019, I kind of arbitrarily put them into 4 brackets: support, recruiting, professional development, and performance management. Now, I'm not an HR specialist, so I imagine they have their own brackets, but that probably broadly, interviewing, probably a 5th one, or firing skills. I mean, it depends on what, contract management, temporary workers, permanent workers, remote workers, there's probably a lot of categories, but I put them into 4. And so let's look at some of the examples I gave. So in support, Gusto, they have a subscription SaaS, or software as a service, for payroll, benefits, and HR. Apps, employee experience platform. And so it's like it's internet. I'm going back, if I go back to 1995, 96, 97, when the internet first came prevalent, and there was a thing called Lotus Notes, and it was basically an intranet, and the big 4, we were using it just to communicate, to share documents, share files. That was 1997. Now you just have an app called Apps, and it allows employees to engage with your employees through your own intranet. So it's basically for your own. You can have the other systems going on, but this is allowing engagement with employees. So an app, simple app. Personio, they call themselves or classify themselves as an all-in-one HR solution for small businesses. And you go to these websites and it's like, startup, look at our demo. The stuff is simple. It's right there on the website and ready to go. There's a chat bot comes on and says, hey, can we help you? Kinix. Kinix or Quinix, the employee scheduling, communication. That's probably for a bigger company, probably meant for that. But again, Caroline worked for the city of Surrey for 24 years. She had a lot to understanding of how big companies work, right? So imagine if she became an expert in something like Kinix and said, hey, I can help you install this. I can be, she could do case studies. I don't know. I mean, it's not easy, obviously. Schedulo, again, workforce scheduling. If you have a big workforce, you have a shift work in a manufacturing plant, maybe back to that Vancouver, the motorcycle guys, Damon Motorcycles. Maybe they're making motorcycles, and maybe you have scheduling, you have shift work, weekends, nights. Maybe you have Amazon near you, an Amazon fulfillment center, right? And you got scheduling issues. Amazon themselves, they probably use a lot of different software from different companies. So then the next category is recruiting. As everybody knows, recruiting, you get Indeed, you get ZipRecruiter, you get all kinds of things for recruiting. But there are other, again, dedicated for your company. Good Time allow you to do online interviews, which this was pre-COVID. Remember, this is 2019. During COVID, man, I imagine Good Time, they had a really good time during COVID because they were already doing things online. Workable. If you've ever applied to jobs, Workable is oftentimes, and I think it's the one, there's so many now, but they do you'll see their name come up as you apply, and you funnel through it, and you get an email saying, thank you for applying to so-and-so company, and it's from Workable. So they have a recruiting software, TalkPush, recruitment chatbots. Again, if you go to their website, they say our chatbots they chat with you during the process. So I don't know if it's internal, extra, helping candidates, helping employees, employers. Seek Out, they use artificial intelligence for recruiting tech talent. Alio, again, using artificial intelligence as a recruiting assistant. I don't know how that works, but I imagine it guesses where you're located. They can see where you're located, your questions that you may have, and it's taking the data. I'm sure there's a lot of data, and so there's a chatbot, but it's intuitive. It probably understands more than the simple yes or no answer. So, I mean, obviously, with artificial intelligence these days, chatbots are a little more sophisticated. Oftentimes, you feel like you're talking to a human, or you're conversing with a human when you're typing on with a chatbot. The next level for HR tech innovation was, I deemed it, professional development. That's your courses, what you need to take, to train and learning, on the job learning, interplay learning, VR simulations to train for skilled trades. Now, this, again, learning on the job. I mean, it's learning, this is a huge part. And there's a company called Gilded Education, and they raised a significant amount of money because companies now don't want to just go and rehire new people. They need to train their existing workforce. A 30, 35-year-old who's been 15 years removed from university, they need to train these people instead of firing them and finding new people. And so there's a real trend where there's a lot of online courses available out there, but training your workforce, real-time training, is becoming to retool, repivot, relearn, re-educate your workforce. So Interplay Learning's a Cloud Guru, Open Sesame, Go One. These are all helping companies with their learning programs, teaching your employees. Performance management. How am I doing on the job? This is and for me, this was, again, the fourth arbitrary classification, performance management. 15.5. There was 2 or 3, if I look at my list, I gave a list of probably about 7 or 8 in this performance management. 15.5 came up as they bought some of the other companies. So anyway, 15.5 seems to be still pretty prevalent, or very prevalent. The continuous employee feedback platform, BetterUp, connects employees with coaches, which is kind of cool. Allows the employees to speak to third parties. I don't know. I mean, it can be very important to talk to somebody outside the organization about your career and not feel threatened or, uncomfortable. Ease. They talk about health benefits, probably not performance management, but it certainly is part of the HR. And then Bonusly, employee recognition platform. That's very important to a lot of people, to get recognition. Maybe the bonus isn't money, but it could be just feedback or praise, or a weekend getaway, a lunch for 2, dinner for 2. So there's a lot, with your significant other. Benefits come in many forms. All right. So I didn't go into the categories. I just went and looked for HR. I mentioned these earlier at the beginning of the podcast. So these are some of the funding announcements. Probably could spend more time and have 2 or 3 pages to fill here, but I just give you an idea. Talent.com still gets me. It's just a search platform. I don't mean there's nothing out. There's a lot out there. ZipRecruiter, Indeed, Monster. There's a lot of resources out there for recruiting and job search, and it's very, very competitive. They raised 120 million, Talent.com, and they're here, a little Canadian company out of Montreal. That's incredible. That tells me they have engagement and people are using their platform. Companies, people. All right. Last thing. I'm just looking at Caroline's. I looked at her. These are just some from looking at her education and her work experience. She has a master's degree in leadership and a 24-year career in human resources. Back to when I mentioned Gilded Education and degreed, retraining the workforce. Her HR skills, if she applied that to, understanding how the leadership, understanding the human resources aspect, and with a key focus on big employers, go out there and say, hey, here's some of these tools. I understand how people think, and as a leader, but maybe she becomes the trainer. I don't know, but to me, it speaks loudly when you talk about a master's in leadership. She understands, and it wasn't that long ago. I think it was 2016 or 2017. So she went back and got her master's. So Caroline, you yourself recognized, and you took the initiative. Hats off to you. You took the initiative during your career to go and get your master's degree. I mean, you are the epitome of someone who's retooled, retrained on the job. I think you could help workforces across Canada, certainly if not across Canada, at least in Vancouver area. Now, she's also worked as a lifeguard trainer for 16 years. I think, I don't think, but something she could do to get attention, to get noticed is write a lifeguard's book about all the different scenarios of first day on the job, life-saving tactics, things to think about, whether it's a pool, a beach, waves, storms, whatever. The reason a lifeguard's book about, there's a company, I don't know the name of I forgot the name of the founder, but it's a kid's book about. And he just started, he's got 5 or 6 kids, and he just started writing. He wanted to give his kids an easy way to learn about, I think it was racism or whatever it was being. And now he's written, I saw recently, they've got 75 plus books on their website. And the recent one was a kid's book about war, to tell them about what's going on in Ukraine and help them understand because they see it in the news. So a lifeguard's book about, or a lifeguard's podcast about, because the kid's book about is now a kid's company about, and they're doing podcasts. They've got books, they've got authors, they've got relationships with New York Times bestsellers, Oprah Winfrey, I mentioned earlier. The kid's book about has a relationship with Oprah Winfrey. So I'm not saying, Caroline, you're going to become the lifeguard. What's that show called? Baywatch. But I mean, you could have an episode on Baywatch, the real or fiction, reality, what was real about. You could sit and break down what they were doing, Pamela Anderson, what they were doing on Baywatch, right? How real was some of that stuff? But I just thought of this now. But a lifeguard's podcast about, she could talk to lifeguards. She could talk to the people who've gone through her program. She could create a chat room on Clubhouse or Facebook Live by the same name, and potential interview. Pool must be significant. Potential interview pool. Oh, so the play on words, the pool. But her interview, the base of people. 16 years. Imagine how many lifeguards went through the program. She brought them invited 5 of them to come. The other 59 or 79 or 159 would get their attention, and they would want to talk. So I love that, the interview pool. What a play on words. But she could then post that content on social media. She highly likely she would get noticed. And okay, if it's for HR skills, oh, by the way, she does HR skills. But that lifeguard training, imagine the amount of lifeguards that have gone through her training programs. Now, the last thing, Caroline is working and influencing kids. It's called the Build a Biz Kids. I didn't look in detail, but I would think some partnerships with kid-focused entities like Kidoodle TV. The founder, Neil Greninger, was here in Calgary. He was on my podcast, co-founder was on my podcast, and Coder Dojo. It's a pretty big franchise now. I see several signs here in Calgary. I did have the Coder Dojo Willow Park. It's from Willow Park. I had the head of marketing and the CTO, or the guy who trains coding kids. So partner with them locally in Vancouver area. Give them things to do. Chefs, musicians, artists, videographers, graphic designers. Bring them in from the local college, BC Tech. There's several colleges in the BC area. And bring these people in, those different trades, sports trainers, soccer, basketball, football. If you watch, say in sports today, the soccer, the basketball moves, the volleyball, the swimming, the techniques you watch, if you go onto YouTube or if you go onto TikTok and you start following the hashtags soccer, basketball, football, it's incredible the amount of skills that you see in a 30-second video. You can see the progression. I mean, partnering with those kind for the kids, Build a Biz Kids. The reason I say this is, kids have so many ideas, and it reminds me of Tom Hanks in the movie Big. Tom Hanks went from being a kid, a 15-year-old, 13-year-old, whatever age he was, to being big, being a man, 40 years old, and he worked for a marketing company, I think with toys, and his mind was still thinking like a kid. So throughout his ideas were, he bridged the gap between the old curmudgeons or the old people who, the old ideas and the new tech, because he was young and in his mind. And I think if she partnered with social media or digital marketing firms with the kids, imagine the ideas that would come through. And this is the next one. I didn't put it on here, but there was the Ken the study, the Oklahoma study. Sir Ken Robinson, the Oklahoma study where the kids were in the kindergarten. They put a kindergarten next to a nursing home or an old folks home or assisted living home. And the kids, after 3 years, the kids at 4 years old were reading at a grade 3 level. Grade 4, 5, 6-year-olds were reading at a much higher level. And the adults or the elderly, they no longer needed their medication. They were healthier. They were more engaged after that program. So, taking kids and pairing them up. She's working with kids from 7 to 13 years old. The ideas would flow. And I just think there's a wonderful opportunity. So I'm going to stop sharing because I think that's the end of this is the end of my presentations or the slides. But Caroline, I think there's a wonderful opportunity. I'm 55, just turned 56. I don't know how old you are, and I'm not making judgments, but your experience, your wealth of knowledge, and you're now influencing kids. Bring that, and I think startups could really use your advice. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm just going to conclude. I just want to conclude because, it appears that Caroline is really, she's leaning in on her strengths, at least her leadership and training. By the way, I'm wearing a UBC shirt. Got this as a gift. My daughter goes to UBC, which, no surprise, Caroline's in Surrey, BC, which is just outside of Vancouver. But it appears she's leaning in on her strengths. She's working with children and youth ages 7 to 13. This is nice to see, given that her parent frustration. It was clear she was frustrated back in 2017 or July 2019 with her job search. Now, I know the list. I gave a few examples here, but the list was much over. There's probably 30 different names, 30 different startups focused on the HR function. I probably, the list I prepared and submitted to Caroline was probably overdone. Ironically, that the selection was not complete. You could do Google search. There's many more companies out there. And that was back in 2019. And as I highlighted, the innovation continues in this area, but she was probably a little bit overwhelmed, understandably, and it was probably overdone on my part. I tend to, as I've said on this past episodes, I tend to just go deep dive. I immerse myself into the swimming pool. I really just immerse myself. I do a deep dive. God, the analogies for swimming. She's a lifeguard. The analogies are great, but I just go right into it. So I have the information. It's not that difficult for me to share it. However, my extensive list was this is indicative of the market. I mentioned cybersecurity. That's just the way it's going on out there, and the rapidly changing and frequently the frequent introduction of new SaaS or software as a service. It can be overwhelming for pretty much anybody. Caroline, I don't think you're an exception. It's overwhelming for everybody. It's overwhelming for me. But I do take guidance, or at least there's how can you manage this? How can you really keep up? And I take guidance from or feedback from Tessa Marr of Marr Media in Kelowna, BC. And as Tessa highlighted during a past episode of my podcast, the Calgary Business Podcast. So this is in context with the rapidly changing SaaS and technology environment. Tessa's recommendations are this. I ask my staff to remain curious and open to such innovation. Learn enough to see if there is relevancy for us to adopt or apply in our business or for that of our customers. So for Caroline and other individuals that find themselves displaced in their career, this is really good advice, Tessa. Again, I know I've returned to this before, but this is really good advice because I gave Caroline a list of 30-something HR, innovate, how do you go through all that? What's important? But look at what's important. Figure out the relevancy. So that's really good advice. Seek to combine your 30 years, your 24 years of practical experience with today's tech and innovative, how to apply that together. So, how to apply it to your work area, your job, what's important. So, it's not going to happen overnight, but imagine if you just spent time imagine you spend time just learning what are the issues that, falling out from recruiting, job searching, performance. What are issues that the employees are having? You'll find the software that meets that, one or two low-hanging fruits. Most people are thinking, how can they SaaS or software as a service? How can it help me find a job? The answer is they won't. You're not going to get a job just from knowing the SaaS. However, the more you can learn about SaaS applicable to your functional area, the more readily you'll identify gaps, and then you can probably really effectively suggest affordable solutions. And solutions that didn't exist, I say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, some of these solutions didn't exist. I mean, things change rapidly. And, you don't need an IT degree. You don't need to go back to university to learn this SaaS. You can readily learn it by downloading the demo, subscribe to the newsletter, company newsletter, follow the company on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, get to know the use cases of their product. Like, again, there's thousands of things out there, but narrow down to what's important to you and potential clients or potential company or the companies you're working for. Read or listen to customer testimonials. That, it could be on their website. It could be attached as it could be written into their newsletters. It could be somebody, posting about that, not a paid ad, but an actual, just somebody posting. You have to pay attention. You have to follow these companies to get familiar with this stuff. But imagine your job interview. Imagine if you're applying for a job as an HR recruiter and you know about some of these software. You're familiar with this. And imagine the chat you can have to go into much about such innovation and how you would potentially apply it. Or alternatively, imagine if you're not able to have such a conversation. This has been Will You Review My CV, episode number 27. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and stay safe.